Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. You guys sent in some really fascinating stuff about smoking and life expectancy.
Yeah.
So we've got a new research study that's making some waves,
Right.
plus some expert opinions, and even a pretty lively Reddit discussion going on.
Interesting.
So let's dive in and see what we can uncover.
Sounds good.
I think the biggest thing that grabbed everyone's attention was this headline from the new study out of University College London. One cigarette shaves 20 minutes off your life expectancy.
Yeah. It's pretty shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, that's almost double what a similar study found back in 2000.
Yeah, they estimated it was like 11 minutes back then.
Right, and this time they even broke it down by gender.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they found men lose an average of 17 minutes per cigarette,
Okay.
and women lose 22.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder why there's a difference.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't think they have a definitive answer yet.
I see.
But it could be things like how men and women metabolize the toxins in cigarette smoke differently,
Okay, that makes sense.
or even hormonal differences affecting cardiovascular health.
Interesting.
But regardless of the reasons behind it, the takeaway is clear.
Yeah, every cigarette has a real impact.
Exactly. And when you think about it in terms of pack-a-day smokers, it gets even more alarming.
How so?
Well, they're losing almost 7 hours of life every single day.
Wow, that puts it into perspective.
It really does.
It's crazy to think that one little cigarette can have such a big impact.
Right, and what I thought was really cool about this study is that they actually dug into the science behind it.
Oh, really? How did they do that?
Well, unlike the older study, which mostly relied on statistical modeling, this team analyzed genetic data from over 500,000 people.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, they were able to identify specific genetic markers linked to both smoking behavior and longevity.
So they're actually showing us how smoking damages our bodies at a molecular level?
Exactly. It's not just saying smoking is bad. They're showing us how it's actually happening.
That's really fascinating.
And, we were talking about that Reddit thread earlier, and it's interesting to see how people are reacting to this information.
What are some of the things people are saying?
Well, a lot of the comments are what you might expect,
Like what?
like people trying to rationalize their smoking habits.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Like one comment I saw said something like, well, I'll just lose the bad years at the end.
Oh. Oh, so they're thinking it only affects you when you're already old and frail?
Right. Like they can somehow outsmart the consequences by just accepting a shorter lifespan.
But this study actually challenges that assumption, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It found that smoking doesn't just cut off a few years at the end.
Okay.
It speeds up the aging process itself.
Oh, wow. How does it do that?
Well, it affects these things called telomeres.
Telomeres.
Yeah, they're like protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes.
Okay.
And their length is an indicator of biological age.
I see.
So as we age, our telomeres naturally shorten,
Right.
but smoking accelerates that shortening.
Oh, so you're saying that a 60-year-old smoker might have the same biological age as a 70-year-old non-smoker?
Exactly. It's not just about living to 80 versus 85.
Right.
It's about how healthy and vibrant you are during those years.
That's a really good point. It's about quality of life, not just quantity.
Exactly. Smoking's not just stealing years, it's stealing vitality.
And this study really highlights that, doesn't it?
It does. And you know what else I thought was really interesting?
What's that?
This study actually found that quitting, even later in life, can slow down this accelerated aging.
Really? So it's like hitting the brakes on that telomere shortening.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
giving your body a chance to catch up.
That's encouraging. So even if you've been smoking for years, it's not too late to make a difference.
Exactly. The researchers actually quantified the benefits.
Oh, how did they do that?
They said if you quit on January 1st, you'll gain a day back by January 8th, a week back by February 5th, and a whole month back by August 5th.
Wow, I love that. It makes quitting feel less like a sacrifice and more like an act of reclaiming something you lost. Exactly. It's a really empowering message.
It is, especially for people who might feel like it's too late to quit.
But looking through those Reddit comments, I saw a lot of pushback against this research.
Really? Like what?
Well, one comment that stuck with me said, I know people who smoked their whole lives and lived into their 90s. This study is just trying to scare people.
Yeah, I've heard that kind of thing before. It's like people are resistant to accepting the link between smoking and lifespan.
It is, and I think part of it is what's called survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias.
What's that?
Well, we tend to focus on the outliers, the people who defied the odds and lived long lives despite smoking.
Right.
But we don't see all the people who weren't so lucky.
The ones who died from smoking-related illnesses.
Exactly. It's like looking at a battlefield and only seeing the soldiers who survived, not the ones who fell.
Wow, that's a powerful
It
analogy.
really makes you realize that anecdotes can be misleading when it comes to assessing risk.
They can. And
Mhm.
that's why scientific studies like this one are so important.
They give us a more objective and comprehensive view.
I agree.
And this study also acknowledges that the 20-minute figure is just an average.
Right, because the impact of each cigarette can vary depending on the person.
Exactly.
Mm.
And I was curious to learn more about what those individual factors are.
Yeah, me too.
Well, they mentioned things like the type of cigarette you smoke, how many puffs you take, how
Mhm.
deeply you inhale.
That makes sense. Those things would all affect how much you're exposed to.
Right, and then there's also individual differences in how our bodies process those toxins.
Like genetics and lifestyle factors.
Exactly. So while this study gives us a good benchmark,
Yeah.
it also raises questions about why some smokers are more resilient than others.
It does. And it opens up a whole new avenue of research.
It does, but I think it's important to remember that even with this variability, there's no safe level of smoking.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This study found that even light smokers, those who only smoke one cigarette a day, have a much higher risk of heart disease and stroke compared to non-smokers.
Oh, wow. So it really debunks that myth that social smoking or just having a few here and there is harmless.
It does.
Hmm.
So whether you're a pack-a-day smoker or someone who just indulges occasionally, every cigarette carries a risk.
That's a really important point.
And it's a risk that adds up over time,
Yeah.
affecting not just how long you live, but also the quality of those years.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about.
It is. And I imagine it's especially challenging for anyone struggling with nicotine addiction.
Yeah, for sure. It is tough, and I think it's important to be sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Nicotine is so addictive.
Right.
It can be really hard to break free.
It can. And when I was reading through that Reddit thread, I saw a lot of people struggling with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could see the conflict in their comments.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, some were scared and wanted to quit,
Mm-hmm.
but others were in denial
Oh, yeah.
or even angry, like they were lashing out at the study.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
hard to hear something that challenges your habits.
Right. Especially when those habits are tied to addiction. And there was this one comment that really stuck with me.
What did it say?
It said something like, I know smoking is bad for me, but it's how I cope. It helps me deal with stress and anxiety.
Yeah, I can see that. For a lot of smokers, it's not just a physical addiction, it's emotional too.
Exactly. They rely on cigarettes to get them through tough times.
Right, it's like a crutch or a comfort.
Yeah, it's a way to navigate difficult situations.
And I bet breaking free from that can feel impossible, especially if you don't have other ways to cope.
It is. It's like you're not just quitting cigarettes, you're quitting a part of your identity.
That's a good way to put it.
And it makes it even more important to address the mental and emotional side of addiction.
Absolutely. You can't just focus on the physical dependence on nicotine.
Right. You need to find healthier ways to manage stress and build new
And
routines.
get support from friends, family, or even a therapist.
Yeah. Speaking of support, there was something really cool I noticed in that Reddit thread.
Oh, what was that?
Well, amidst all the debate and denial, there was also a ton of support from former smokers.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, they were sharing their stories, offering tips, reminding people that it is possible to quit.
Peer support is so powerful when it comes to addiction recovery.
It is. It gives you hope and motivation, knowing that others have done it.
Yeah, it's like having a group of guides who understand what you're going through.
Exactly.
And it shows that quitting isn't just about willpower, it's about having the right support.
And the right motivation, too.
What do you mean?
Well, one common theme in those success stories was finding your why.
Their reason for quitting.
Exactly. The people who could clearly articulate why they wanted to quit seemed to be more successful.
That makes sense. Having a strong why can give you the fuel to keep going even when it gets hard.
Right. It's like setting a destination and then using that destination to guide your journey.
It's about connecting with your values and your goals.
And realizing that quitting isn't a punishment,
It's a gift.
a gift you give yourself.
Exactly. A gift of health, vitality, freedom.
Yeah, it's not about losing something. It's about gaining something better.
And those gains, like the study showed, start right away.
Yeah, they talked about reclaiming lost time.
It's such a great way to think about it. It's not just adding years to your life. It's getting back the moments that smoking steals from you
It's about being present in your life.
and breaking free from that cycle of craving and guilt.
Yeah, it's really amazing how this conversation has shifted.
How so?
We started by talking about the science and the scary statistics.
Right.
But now we're talking about hope, empowerment, transformation.
It's a reminder that even with addiction, there's always a path towards healing.
There is, and it's a path worth taking.
Not just for the smoker, but for everyone around them.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah, when one person quits, it creates a positive impact on their loved ones, their community, even society as a whole.
It really shows that individual choices can have a huge collective impact.
They can.
And, before we move on, I do want to acknowledge that for some people, quitting might not be the right choice right now.
It might not be. They might not be ready, or maybe they have other challenges going on.
Exactly. And that's okay.
It is. There's no judgment here. Everyone's journey is different.
And even if someone's not ready to quit completely, there are still things they can do to reduce their risk.
Like cutting back or switching to a less harmful alternative.
Right. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
It's about progress, not perfection.
And it's about giving people the support and information they need to make the best choices for themselves.
Absolutely.
There was something else that came up in those Reddit comments that I wanted to talk about.
What's that?
A lot of people were worried about the societal implications of this research.
Oh, yeah.
They were concerned that highlighting the negative impact of even one cigarette could lead to more stigma against smokers.
That's a good point. We need to be careful about that.
We do. It's important to spread awareness about the risks,
Right.
but we need to do it in a way that encourages positive change without making smokers feel ashamed or judged.
I agree. Stigmatizing people can actually make it harder for them to quit.
It can make them feel isolated and hopeless.
Exactly. What we need is a compassionate approach that recognizes how complex addiction is.
In an approach that meets people where they are.
Right.
Because quitting is a process.
It is.
There might be setbacks along the way,
For sure.
but it's about learning from those setbacks and keeping moving forward.
And celebrating every victory, no matter how small.
Exactly.
Whether it's cutting back, finding a new coping mechanism, or talking to someone for support.
Right. Every step in the right direction is worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
I think one of the most helpful things we can do is shift our focus from individual blame to systemic solutions.
What do you mean?
Well, we need to address the social and economic factors that contribute to smoking.
Things like poverty and lack of access to healthcare.
Exactly. Those things make it harder for people to quit.
They do. We need to create environments that support healthy choices.
Right. And invest in research to develop better cessation programs and therapies.
I couldn't agree more. The more we learn about addiction, the better we can help people.
So, this deep dive started by looking at the impact of a single cigarette, but it's really become a much bigger conversation.
About addiction recovery and creating a healthier society.
Exactly. And it's a conversation I'm glad we're having.
Me too. It's important to talk about these things openly and honestly.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to think about.
Okay.
What's one small thing you can do to create a more supportive environment for people struggling with nicotine addiction?
Yeah, it could be something as simple as listening to a friend, sharing a resource, or advocating for policies that promote health equity.
Right. Even small acts of kindness can make a big difference.
They can.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
We hope you learned something.
And we hope you feel empowered to make healthy choices.
To a healthier future.
Cheers.
Yeah, it is something to be mindful of, for sure. It's a tough balance.
It is. We want people to understand the risks.
Right.
But we don't want to shame anyone or make them feel like they're being attacked.
Exactly, because honestly, shaming people usually backfires.
How so?
Well, it can make people feel isolated and like they've already failed.
And that can make it even harder to quit.
Exactly. What we need to do is approach this with compassion and understanding.
Yeah, we need to meet people where they are.
Right, and recognize that quitting isn't always easy.
It's a process, not a switch you can just flip on and off.
Exactly. There will probably be setbacks along the way.
There will. But it's about learning from those setbacks and not giving up.
And celebrating the wins along the way, too.
Right. Even the small ones.
Yeah, like if someone cuts back from a pack a day to half a pack, that's huge.
It is. It's all about moving in the right direction.
Exactly.
And I think we also need to think bigger picture here.
What do you mean?
Well, instead of just focusing on individual choices,
Right.
we need to address the systemic issues that contribute to smoking in the first place.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, things like poverty and lack of access to health care, those make it so much harder to quit.
Yeah, you're right. We need to create environments that make it easier for people to make healthy choices.
And invest in more research to find better ways to help people quit.
Absolutely. The more we understand about addiction, the better we can support people.
So, we started this deep dive talking about the impact of one cigarette.
We did.
But it's really become a much broader conversation, hasn't it?
It has about addiction recovery and how we can create a healthier society.
And I think that's a really important conversation to have.
It is. Open and honest dialogue is so crucial.
It is. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
What's one small thing you can do to create a more supportive environment for someone struggling with nicotine addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's listening to a friend or sharing a helpful resource.
Or advocating for policies that address those systemic issues we were talking about.
Exactly. Even small acts of kindness can make a big difference.
They really can.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
It was great to have this conversation.
And we hope you feel inspired to make some positive changes in your own life.
To a healthier future.
Cheers, everyone.